Hello, good morning and welcome to Breakfast with Frost. Are school teachers ever justified in going on strike? 3 unions are now poised to take or ballot on industrial action. The first strike could take place within weeks. This morning we'll be talking to one of the teachers behind the proposed strike action, to a union leader and to a parent governor. And we'll be talking to padiattering, some form of industrial action at some stage over class sizes. In a moment I'll be discussing the prospect of strike action in our schools, but first of all this report, this update from our correspondent Charles Rhodes.
1 million primary school children attend classes with more than 30 pupils. That's 1 in 5. The government's refusal to fund a 2.7% pay rise for teachers in this year's spending round has led to a budget shortfall the government says should be met locally. That's raised the prospect of 10,000 teachers being made redundant. The scale of industrial action won't be known until the autumn, when those redundancies are felt. Feelings were running high at the NUT's annual conference last weekend. The Shadow Education Secretary, David Blunkett, had to retreat to an office to escape this crowd of protesting teachers. Delegates to the conference eventually defied the union's leadership and voted for a one-day strike. A ballot will be held next term. Members of the NAS-UWT also met this week. They avoided an immediate ballot on strike action. They planned first to give local school management a chance to reduce class sizes. But if that doesn't work, they're ready to exclude children from oversized classes on a rota basis.
We will not turn away from expressing ourselves and using the strike or the industrial action weapon should it be so needed.
With the ratio of children to teachers in primary schools continuing to rise and an extra 100,000 pupils starting school this autumn, the prospect of industrial action by teachers looks increasingly likely.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, I'm joined now by Margaret Morrissey of the National Confederation of Parent Teachers Associations. Good morning. Nigel De Grucci, who is General Secretary of the NAS-UWT Teaching Union, one of these wonderfully complex initials, but used to be only NAS, but anyway. And Martin Powell-Davies, who's a teacher from South London, who's been helping to organise the more militant action, or the strike action. Let's start with you, Martin, shall we? I mean, the news of the vote at the NUT was sort of roundly criticised by people from all sides. Why do you defend it as okay for children?
Well, I think it was roundly criticised from all sides, apart from ordinary parents and teachers on the ground, who know that we can't put up with the scandal of oversized classes any longer. But teachers want to be able to make sure they can give their pupils a decent education. You simply can't do that in classes of 30, 35 or 40. And that's why I think the public will support our calls for strike action, because they know that we're actually trying to do something about it.
What do you think, Margaret?
I think it's very, very sad that teachers have been put into this position, and we the parents understand more than anyone else why the teachers are doing it. They're doing it for our children. It's still going to cause disruption for them, and there will be parents in some parts who can support the strike action. But in the whole, especially in our organisation, we do not support it. But we're not saying that we don't support teachers. We support them wholeheartedly.
While everybody obviously would like smaller and smaller classes, obviously it would be better and better. David Blunkett said there should be research. Gillian Shepherd said there may not be a link, and so on. I know, thinking back, when I was growing up, I was always in a class of about 45, 48, and when I did a bit of supply teaching, the classes were 45 or 48. Is 35 really impossible?
Well, I think that's one of the most fatuous things the government has said recently, because there is some evidence that smaller classes does actually lead to improved standards. There was a massive research project conducted in America, in Tennessee, from 1985 to 1991, There's the Reading Recovery Scheme, which has been operated in New Zealand, over here, and in 1 or 2 other countries as well. And the key feature to that scheme was small groups to enable children to catch up and make progress. Now, if the government is saying, let's go back to the 19th century, because that's where we had classes of 50, 60 and 70.
Now, I wasn't educated in the 19th century, I hasten to say, but yeah, carry on.
Yes, and also, you see, when you make comments that it doesn't matter if you have classes of 50 if you adopt traditional styles of teaching, I mean, to say that just shows that people just don't understand what the law now requires. Because the national curriculum, as it's constructed, particularly at key stages 1 and 2, which is the 7 and 11-year-olds, is actually impossible to conduct whole class teaching in respect of certain aspects of the national curriculum. Now, teachers, when they say, well, I just cannot cope when I'm asked to teach that in classes above 40, when they're actually acting as professionals. No one condemns a surgeon when approaching an operating theatre, finding the conditions to be totally unsatisfactory, says, I cannot operate. The patient is then told, you can't come in, maybe into the hospital or maybe into the operating theatre. And yet when teachers seek to exercise the same kind of professional judgment and say we cannot operate reasonably in those circumstances, for some unknown reason, we're condemned as unprofessional and irresponsible. In actual fact, we're trying to protect our working conditions and we're trying to do good for the children as well.
Some people say, when the roundly criticised we were talking about to do with the NUT proposal, balloting proposal, some people say you're much more understanding in your proposed form of action. Then others say it'll be even more chaotic for parents and children, because, you know, there'll be 3 children going to a school and 1 will be off one day and 1 will be off another day, and the whole thing will be chaotic.
We're actually trying to minimise the disruption to children, and therefore we don't believe it appropriate at this stage to engage in national strike action. But we do want to insist upon smaller, reasonably sized classes. And therefore I think it's much better to say in those circumstances, listen, take away the surplus children, supervise them elsewhere if that's possible, rather than sending them home.
Who would do that, though?
Well, the head teacher, deputy head. One of the problems of local management is that so many people have been taken out of teaching to deal with the bureaucracy of local management. And we now find many deputy heads have no teaching commitment at all because they're running the budget. Now, I think we should look again at things like that, and Gillian Shepherd was quite right when she said there is no simple reason why class sizes are large. That's true. So let's tackle the problems at school level, which is what the NASGWT wants to do. But if at the end of the day we can't resolve those problems, we may have to stand up in a firm way and be a traditional trade union and say, well, that is totally unreasonable, up with that, we cannot put any longer.
But I mean, you're saying that the children who are not allowed to go to school should be supervised by head teachers or left at home?
If that's possible.
Or left at home.
Let's look at the internal management of schools first of all, because some of the problems can be resolved at that level. Of course, it is true to say that the funding problem from the government and from some local educational authorities also plays a part in this equation.
So what do you think is going to happen, Martin?
Well, I think Nigel's missing out on the urgency of the situation. As your report showed, we are looking at thousands of teachers facing the sack in the next few months, at a time when even the government's own figures show that we need 19,000 extra teachers in order to keep class sizes as they are at the moment as pupil numbers rise. And that's why I think there was that mood of militancy at the conference, a demand that something's got to be done. There are governors around the country so that they can't make the cuts that they're being asked to make. They're refusing to make those cuts. We've seen demonstrations all around the country, in London, in places like, like we had 5,000 demonstrating in Taunton. There are parents saying to teachers, yes, we need something to be done, and therefore I think the call for a one-day strike will get support from teachers, and then the government are going to have to think very seriously about how they're going to respond to that.
You're talking about protests. I mean, were you as ashamed as everybody else was by the demonstrations at the NUT against David Blunkett and so on?
Well, I think that event has been blown out of all proportion to try and divert attention away from what was really happening. Militant teachers believe in winning their arguments by debate. That's precisely what we did at NUT conference. We persuaded people to vote for class size action, and I think that's the real reason why Mr McAvoy and Mrs Shepherd is angry with us for what we did at NUT conference.
Yes, other people say that the militants have got an undue influence over the conference because it's the militants. I'm using this small m without getting into definitions.
Okay, well I'm with a big M.
You're a big M, all right, well we'll use a big M as well.
Okay.
But upper and lower case in this case. But they say that in fact it's the militants who've got an out of proportion hold on the NUT conference, and that the rank and file teachers won't go along with this, and they would feel ashamed by that behaviour because your conference is not typical of your whole membership.
Well, I think it's Mr McAvoy and perhaps some of the others who have criticised the conference who are actually out of touch. I think it's been a while since Mr. McAvoy was in the classroom, and perhaps he hasn't picked up the fact that there is a real feeling of anger in the classrooms because teachers just can't do their job properly. They haven't got enough resources, the classes are oversized, and I think Mr. McAvoy should think carefully about actually supporting the policy of that conference. It is a union conference that agrees the policy of any union.
I think it's a shame that the very civilised treatment which we gave David Blunkett was not given equal publicity to the rather sad treatment he received at another conference. Can I also say that if I believed...
Good news is no news,
That's unfortunately the case. But if I believed that a one-day strike would actually resolve the problem of the non-funding of the Teachers' Pay Award, I'd be the first to advocate it. I just don't happen to believe that that particular tactic is going to succeed. So we do have to find alternative measures.
Yes, and it's funding, and it's funding next week. The Secretary of State visited the Parents Association AGM yesterday, and it was made very, very clear to her that parents have lost all patience and think the time is now. We don't condone the action that the NAS, the NUT or the ATL may be forced into. We don't see any other solution for them. There is a solution. It's fund this year's under-resourcing, put that right, let's talk about it, but let's talk about it this year and mean it. These guys have sat here doing their best, teaching our children, struggling and being promised and promised and promised, and it has not happened. We're told move into this century. They've moved. They haven't had the money, the resources, the teachers to do it. They've got to have them. It's not a case of being political or anything else. Parents want it tomorrow. Not next week, not next month, tomorrow. It's got to be put there. It's got to be put right. We believe the teachers are professional people. They must not be put into this position. We will not be divided from them. Whatever the papers or the press or whoever wants to try and divide us by saying a statement that I make and cutting half of it and putting half of it in, we won't let that happen. We're standing behind them. We can't condone action. We understand why they're saying they'll do it. We've got to stop it before it happens, and we will.
Thank you all very much indeed for joining us this morning, and we will put some of those points on the next visit that Gillian Shepherd makes to our studio here. And right now, Hotfoot from Morocco. Here he is now. He's back after all of his Moroccan research, and here he is, Rory Bremner.
Thank you, David.